Karen Morgan stood frozen in the lobby of her hotel, the floor seemingly shifting beneath her feet. The voice of her daughter-in-law, Melissa, cut through the air like a knife, sharp and demanding through the receptionist's phone speaker. "Cancel my mother-in-law's reservation. I need 5 rooms for my family." Ethan, the young receptionist who had been with Karen since she opened the Blue Coast Hotel, faltered with the phone in his hand. All color drained from his face as his eyes met Karen's. She had just walked through the main entrance, returning from a business lunch in town, her suitcase in tow. She had been planning to stay in her own hotel this weekend, in the reservation she had personally made, hoping against hope to reconnect with her son. "Let me get the owner," Ethan stammered into the phone. Karen set down her designer handbag, a rare splurge she had allowed herself after the hotel's second profitable year, and strode purposefully toward the reception desk, her heels clicking against the gray marble floor she had selected herself 3 years ago. "Hello, Melissa," Karen said loudly, just enough for her to hear through the speakerphone. "What seems to be the problem?" The silence that followed was deafening. Karen could hear her daughter-in-law's sharp intake of breath on the other end of the line. Then, a click. She had hung up. Ethan was looking at Karen as if he'd just witnessed a car crash. And maybe he had, because what was about to unfold would shatter what little remained of her family. Karen took the phone from Ethan's trembling hands and dialed Melissa's number. 1, 2, 3 rings. She answered but didn't speak. Karen could hear only her agitated breathing. "See you in 20 minutes, Karen told her with a calm she didn't feel. "Here at my hotel." She hung up before Melissa could reply. Her heart was beating so hard she thought everyone in the lobby could hear it. She looked at Ethan and gave him a simple instruction. "Prepare the conference room and coffee. Lots of coffee." He nodded and disappeared toward the back of the building. Karen was left alone in the lobby, surrounded by the place she had built with her own hands, feeling like everything she had tried to protect was about to explode. 20 minutes. That was all the time she had to mentally prepare for the confrontation she had avoided for 5 years. Karen went up to her office on the 2nd floor, left her suitcase by the door, and sat at the wooden desk that had belonged to her late husband, James. From the window, she could see the parking lot. She knew Melissa would arrive. She had no choice. She had been exposed, caught in her own trap, and something told Karen that her daughter-in-law wouldn't come alone. Karen Morgan was 65 years old, and every wrinkle on her face told a story of survival. This hotel, with its ivory-colored walls, gray marble floors, and garden that overlooked the ocean, she had built all of this alone. After her husband died 8 years ago. After Andrew married Melissa 5 years ago. After her life became an endless series of family scenes where she was treated like a piece of old furniture that nobody knew where to put. Invisible, irrelevant, a burden. Melissa had never hidden her contempt for Karen. From the first day they met, when Andrew brought her home with that nervous smile that warned Karen her son was no longer completely hers, Melissa had measured Karen's every word, every gesture, evaluating if she was sophisticated enough for her social circle. Karen's modest house in the suburbs, her simple clothes, her straightforward way of speaking, none of it fit into the perfect image Melissa had designed for her life. And Karen definitely didn't fit into the image Melissa wanted to project as Andrew's wife. "Your mother is quaint," she once told Andrew, thinking Karen couldn't hear her. They were in Karen's kitchen. She was preparing dinner while they chatted in the living room. "But when we have kids, I think it would be better if they spent more time with my family, you know, so they have better influences." Andrew had said nothing. That silence hurt more than any direct insult. Her son, the boy she had raised alone after his father's death, the young man she had taught that dignity has no price, stayed silent while his wife erased Karen from his future. After that night, something broke in Karen. It wasn't dramatic. There were no screaming matches or slamming doors. It was quieter and more devastating. The decision to stop begging for love, to stop showing up in their lives expecting crumbs of attention. She took her savings, sold the house where Andrew grew up, took out loans she knew would take years to pay off, and bought this abandoned plot of land overlooking the ocean. Everyone thought she had lost her mind. "A woman your age starting a hotel business? Are you crazy, Karen?" they told her. Maybe she was crazy, but it was her madness, her project, her escape. It took her 3 years to turn those ruins into a 12-room boutique hotel. She hired architects, designers, worked side by side with construction workers and painters. She learned about permits, taxes, digital marketing, social media. She got up every morning at 5 o'clock a.m., worked until darkness forced her to stop, and started all over again the next day. The physical pain was welcome. It distracted her from the other pain, the one with no bandages or painkillers, the pain of knowing her son had chosen to please his wife over maintaining a relationship with his mother. Andrew came to the grand opening alone. Melissa had a terrible migraine. He toured the facilities in silence, touching the walls as if he couldn't believe Karen had accomplished this. "Mom, this is incredible," he finally told her. And for a moment, Karen saw her real son, not the watered-down version Melissa had molded. "Why didn't you tell me you were doing something this big?" Karen held his gaze. "Because you stopped asking about my life a long time ago." He left that same night. He didn't visit her again for 3 years, until now. Until this reservation she had made for both of them, her last desperate play. She had written him a simple email. "The hotel is turning 3. I'd like us to celebrate together. I've reserved the main suite for you, just 1 weekend. Andrew, please." His reply came 2 days later. "I'll be there, Mom." 3 words that made her cry onto her computer keyboard. 3 words that gave her back her hope. 3 words that Melissa had just tried to destroy with a single phone call. Karen looked at her watch. 12 minutes had passed. A silver car entered the parking lot, skidding slightly on the gravel. Melissa got out of the vehicle with sharp movements, her dark hair perfectly styled even in the midst of crisis. She was wearing an emerald green dress that probably cost more than Ethan's monthly salary. She slammed the car door so hard Karen heard the thud from her office. But Melissa wasn't alone. From the passenger seat, Andrew got out. Karen's heart stopped. Her son was here, pale, shoulders slumped, walking 3 steps behind his wife like a scolded child. Melissa stopped in front of the main entrance, smoothed her dress, lifted her chin, and walked in. Andrew followed. Neither of them knew Karen was watching them from above. Neither of them knew this confrontation wouldn't end the way they expected. Karen picked up her phone, took a deep breath, and dialed the extension for reception. "Ethan, send them up." She walked down the stairs with measured steps, each one calculated not to show the earthquake she felt inside. Melissa was standing in the center of the lobby, looking around as if she were evaluating the place for a scathing review. Andrew lingered near the door, hands in his pockets, his gaze fixed on the marble floor. When Karen's shoes echoed on the last step, they both turned. Melissa's expression went from shock to indignation in less than a second. "You," she said, as if that single word were a complete accusation. "Me," Karen replied, stopping 10 feet away. "The owner of the hotel you just called to cancel my reservation." Melissa opened her mouth, closed it, opened it again. For the first time in 5 years, Karen saw her speechless. It was almost satisfying. Almost. Because when her eyes met Andrew's, all that satisfaction evaporated. Her son was looking at her with a mixture of confusion and something worse, shame. Not for his wife, but for Karen. As if she were the one who had done something wrong by existing, by succeeding, by not conveniently disappearing from their lives. "Mom?" he said finally, and that word sounded more like an apology than a greeting. "We didn't know this was your hotel. You didn't tell us." Karen laughed. It was a short, bitter laugh that surprised even her. "I didn't tell you, Andrew. I sent you the invitation from the hotel's official email. The name is on the website, on social media, on every single invoice. Karen Morgan, owner and founder. At what point during these 3 years did it occur to you to wonder what I was doing, where I lived, what my job was, how I paid my bills?" The silence that followed was so thick Karen could feel it pressing against her skin. Melissa recovered her composure first. Of course she did. She had always been good at reassembling herself quickly, at turning any situation to her advantage. "Karen," she said, and the way she pronounced Karen's name with that studied condescension made Karen clench her fists. "This is clearly a misunderstanding. I didn't know this was your hotel. If I had known, I obviously never would have tried to cancel my reservation to give the rooms to your family," Karen interrupted. "That's the version we're going with?" She took a step toward Melissa, then another. Melissa instinctively recoiled. "Tell me, Melissa, what part exactly is the misunderstanding? The part where you called demanding my reservation be canceled without even consulting me, or the part where you assumed you had the right to dispose of something that doesn't belong to you?" "My family is coming to visit," Melissa said, lifting her chin, regaining ground. "They are 5 important people who need lodging this weekend. I didn't know you had plans here. I thought Andrew had booked this place for us and that you had simply invited yourself along." The audacity of that statement left Karen breathless for a moment. She had invited herself to her own hotel, to the reservation she had made herself. This woman's reality bending was Olympic level. "Melissa, that's enough," Andrew muttered, but his voice had no strength. It was the murmur of someone who had given up fighting a long time ago. She ignored him completely. "Look, Karen, I know things between us have been tense, but this is a perfect opportunity to start fresh. My family is eager to see the place where Andrew and I are spending the weekend. They are very important people. My mother, my uncles, people with connections. This could be excellent publicity for your little business." Little business. Those 2 words held all the venom she had been saving for years. This hotel had cost $250,000 between the land purchase, construction, and furnishings. Karen had hired an award-winning architect, renowned interior designers, imported furniture and decor. The online reviews gave them 5 stars. They had been mentioned in travel magazines. Little business. As if 3 years of Karen's life, every cent of her savings, every sleepless night could be reduced to those 2 condescending words. "This little business is worth more than the house you and Andrew live in," Karen said calmly. "This little business generates more money in 1 month than Andrew earns in 3. So no, Melissa, I don't need publicity from your mother or your important uncles. What I needed was a weekend with my son, something that is apparently too much to ask." Andrew finally moved. He walked toward Karen with those steps she remembered from when he was a boy, when he had done something wrong and was coming to confess. "Mom, listen, Melissa didn't mean it that way. Her family really is coming this weekend. They've been planning it for months. We can reschedule, right? We can come another weekend, whichever one you want." They've been planning it for months," Karen repeated, feeling something inside her begin to fracture. "Andrew, I sent you the invitation 6 weeks ago. You confirmed 4 weeks ago. At what point during those 4 weeks did it occur to you to mention that the plans had changed? Or did you never intend to come at all? Was it just easier to confirm and then cancel at the last minute than to tell me the truth?" "It's not like that," he said, but the way he avoided her gaze said otherwise. "It's just that Melissa told me about her family a few days ago, and I thought we could combine both things. Everyone together, a big family reunion. A family reunion with Melissa's family at my hotel during the weekend I had planned to reconnect with my son." The level of delusion was almost impressive. "And when were you planning to tell me that your wife had invited 5 more people to my reservation? When they showed up with their suitcases? Or were you going to let me find out when Melissa called to cancel on me as she just did?" Melissa let out a dramatic sigh. "For God's sake, Karen, you're blowing this all out of proportion. I was just trying to modify a reservation. Is all this theater really necessary?" Theater, another word carefully chosen to minimize what she had done. Karen turned to her completely, forgetting Andrew for a moment. "No, Melissa, you didn't try to make a modification. You called demanding they cancel my reservation without my knowledge or consent. That's not a modification. That's attempted theft. And if Ethan hadn't been smart enough to hesitate, if I hadn't arrived at that exact moment, what would have happened? Would you have shown up with your family and simply kicked me out? Would you have left me on the street while you enjoyed the rooms I paid for?" "Nobody was going to leave you on the street," Melissa said, but her voice had lost its force. I just thought that since it's your hotel, you could easily get another room, or stay at your house, or wherever it is you live now. Wherever it is you live now. As if for the last 3 years, Karen had been wandering aimlessly, as if this hotel wasn't also her home. I live here, Karen wanted to scream. In the room on the 4th floor that no one can book because it's mine. But she didn't give Melissa that information. She didn't deserve to know anything else about Karen's life. This weekend is important to me, Karen said, and she hated how her voice cracked slightly on the last word. It's not just a reservation. It's the anniversary of this place. It's my way of celebrating that I survived, that I built something beautiful after losing everything. And I wanted to share it with my son. Only with him. Without interruptions, without an audience, without having to pretend we're a happy family in front of strangers. She looked at Andrew directly. But it seems that's too much to ask. Andrew opened his mouth to answer, but Melissa interrupted him by placing a hand on his arm. That gesture, that damn gesture, Karen had seen it 1,000 times. The way Melissa touched him when she wanted to silence him, control him, remind him who was really in charge. And the worst part was that it worked. Her son closed his mouth like an obedient child. Karen, I think you're being incredibly selfish, Melissa said, and the word hit Karen like a slap. My family has been planning this trip. They've paid for plane tickets. They've taken time off work. Are you really going to ruin all of that over your whim to have a weekend alone with Andrew? He lives here in this city. You can see him whenever you want. Karen laughed. It was a dry, hollow laugh that echoed strangely in the empty lobby. Whenever I want? Melissa, the last time I saw my son was 11 months ago, on his birthday, for 20 minutes in a restaurant where you didn't stop checking your phone, and he didn't stop apologizing for having to leave early because you had commitments. Before that, 8 months. Christmas. 30 minutes at your house where I was sat in the living room as if I were an annoying salesperson. So don't tell me I can see him whenever I want because it's a lie, and we both know it. Melissa's face hardened. Something in Karen's words had struck a nerve. Good. Let it hurt. If you don't see Andrew more often, it's because you decided to walk away. You sold your house. You moved far away to start this project. You were the one who chose the hotel over the family. Every accusation was a poisoned arrow designed to make Karen feel guilty. And for a second, it almost worked. Almost, until she remembered all the times she had tried to reach out. All the rejected invitations, all the unreturned calls, all the, "We're just so busy, Mom," that Andrew repeated like a learned mantra. I didn't choose this hotel over my family, Karen said, feeling the rage she had been suppressing for years begin to boil. I built this hotel because I didn't have a family anymore, because my son decided that keeping his wife happy was more important than keeping a relationship with his mother, because every time I tried to visit, you found a reason for the visit to be short, awkward, or canceled outright, because I got tired of begging for scraps of attention from my own son. That's not fair, Andrew exclaimed, finally finding his voice. I never asked you to stay away. I never said I didn't want to see you. Karen spun toward him with such force that he took a step back. No, Andrew, you never said it. That's exactly the problem. You never said anything. When Melissa commented that my clothes were outdated, you said nothing. When she made it clear I wasn't welcome at her dinners with friends, you said nothing. When her family treated me like I was the hired help at gatherings, you said nothing. Your silence said everything. She watched guilt flash across his face. Good. Let him feel it. Let him carry the weight of all those moments where he chose comfort over courage. Mom, I didn't know you felt that way, he said. But even those words sounded rehearsed, as if he'd said them 1,000 times in similar conversations. If you had just told me, Karen moved closer to him. They were inches apart. She could see the small wrinkles around his eyes, the premature gray hairs starting to appear at his temples. Her little boy, her son, the man he had become and whom she no longer fully recognized. I did tell you, Andrew, she whispered. Not with words, because you never gave me the chance to have a real conversation with you. But I told you in every way possible. Every time I called and you cut the conversation short in 5 minutes. Every time I asked about your life and you answered in monosyllables. Every time I invited you to something and you said yes but then canceled. All of that was me telling you I was losing you, and you chose not to listen. Melissa physically stepped between them. Enough. This is ridiculous. Andrew, we're leaving. Clearly your mother is more interested in making you feel guilty than in resolving this like adults. She tried to take Andrew's hand, but something happened. Something Karen had never seen before. Andrew pulled away. It was a small, almost imperceptible movement, but they both noticed it. Melissa's eyes widened with surprise and something else. Fear, because maybe for the first time her son wasn't automatically following her script. "Give me a minute, Melissa," Andrew said, his voice tired. "Just a minute alone with my mother." She looked at him as if he had slapped her. "Excuse me?" Her tone was a warning, the voice she used when he was about to cross an invisible line. "Melissa, please, just a minute." Karen waited for her to refuse. She waited for her son to cave as he always did. But this time, Andrew held her gaze, and after what felt like an eternity, Melissa turned on her heel and walked toward the entrance, her heels striking the marble with contained fury. She stopped at the door without turning around. 5 minutes, she said. I'll be in the car. The door closed behind her with a thud that echoed through the building. They were left alone, mother and son, with 3 years of silence between them. Andrew ran his hands over his face, a gesture Karen recognized from his father, something he did when he was overwhelmed. "I don't know what to say, Mom," he finally admitted. "Everything you said is true." Andrew sank into one of the lobby armchairs, and Karen took a seat across from him. "I'm sorry, God, I'm so sorry." Apologies were easy. Apologies didn't cost anything. What Karen needed were answers. "Why, Andrew? Why did you let it happen? Your father died 8 years ago. I was all you had left, and you abandoned me for a woman who clearly can't stand me." "I didn't abandon you," he protested weakly. Melissa is my wife. I have to choose her. That's how marriage works." Karen leaned forward. "Choose her over me? Your father never made me choose between him and your grandmother. Healthy marriages don't demand you cut ties with your family of origin. But you allowed it. Every time she criticized something about me, you stayed quiet. Every time she canceled a visit, you just accepted it. Do you know what that told me? That I wasn't worth fighting for." There was so much pain in Andrew's face, it almost made Karen take it all back. Almost. "Melissa can be difficult," he said finally. "When things aren't her way, she becomes impossible. She makes scenes, she cries, she threatens to leave. She gives me the silent treatment for days. It's just easier to please her than to confront her." Every word was a confession and also an excuse. "So you sacrificed me to keep the peace in your marriage," Karen said slowly. "I became the collateral damage of your decision to avoid conflict." "I don't see it like that," he replied, but he wouldn't meet her eyes. "I just tried to keep a balance, to make you both happy." "Andrew, look at me." He finally did. His eyes were wet. "You can't make 2 people happy when one of them demands the other doesn't exist. That's not a search for balance. It's a surrender. And you chose to surrender to her instead of defending what you and I had." The silence stretched between them. Karen could hear the wall clock ticking. She could see through the windows the car where Melissa was waiting, probably counting every second of these 5 minutes. "When was the last time you were truly happy with her?" Karen asked suddenly. The question caught him off guard. "What?" "Your marriage to Melissa. When was the last time you felt genuinely happy? Not comfortable, not resigned. Happy." Andrew was silent for so long, Karen thought he wouldn't answer. Then, almost in a whisper, he said, "I don't remember, Mom, and that terrifies me." Those words hung in the air like a dead weight. Her son had just admitted he couldn't remember the last time he'd been happy with his wife. And the way he said it, in that small, defeated voice, broke Karen's heart in ways no insult from Melissa ever could. "Ryan," she began, but he held up a hand to stop her. "No, Mom, don't look at me like that. Not with pity. I get enough of that every time I look in the mirror." He stood up and walked to the windows overlooking the garden. The ocean looked calm from here, the waves small and steady. What an irony. The sea calm while their lives were falling apart. "The first few months were good," he said, talking more to himself than to Karen. "Melissa was charming, fun, passionate. She made me feel important, like I was the only person in the world who mattered. But after the wedding, something changed. Or maybe nothing changed. Maybe I just started to see what was always there." He turned to Karen. "It started with small things. She'd criticize my clothes. She'd say my friends were boring. She'd suggest I shouldn't have lunch with my coworkers so often because I was wasting time instead of advancing my career. Each suggestion sounded reasonable on its own. But together they turned me into someone I don't even recognize." Karen wanted to run to him, to hug him like when he was a child and had nightmares. But she stayed seated. She needed to hear this. She needed him to say out loud what he had been burying for years. "And Mom, I was the biggest idiot of all because when it started with you, when she started making comments about your way of speaking, your house, your job, I didn't defend you. I thought I was being neutral. I thought if I didn't take sides, eventually you two would find a way to get along." His laugh was bitter, as if neutrality in the face of abuse is a virtue instead of cowardice. "Why do you stay?" The question slipped out before Karen could stop it. "If you're so unhappy, if you know she's changing you, why are you still there?" Andrew rubbed his eyes with a closed fist. "Because I'm 35 years old and failing at my first marriage would be devastating. Because our lives are completely intertwined. Joint bank accounts, house in both our names. All our friends are couples she chose. Because every time I think about leaving, she somehow senses it and becomes the woman I fell in love with for just long enough to make me doubt. Because I'm tired, Mom. Just so tired." The front door flew open violently. Melissa stormed in like a hurricane dressed in emerald. "Time's up," she announced. "Andrew, we're going now." But her son didn't move. For the first time in probably years, he stayed exactly where he was. "We're still talking, Melissa." The temperature in the lobby seemed to drop 10 degrees. "I'm sorry, what did you say?" Her tone was dangerously low. Karen recognized that voice. It was the voice that preceded the scenes Andrew had mentioned. The tears, the threats, the silent punishment. "I said we're still talking," Andrew repeated. And though his voice trembled, he didn't back down. "My mother and I have a lot to talk about. Things that should have been said years ago." Melissa looked at Karen as if she were poison. "Of course it's already started. The classic maternal manipulation. Make you feel guilty, paint me as the villain, convince you your marriage is a prison." She turned back to Andrew. I wonder how long it took for her to cry. The coldness with which she dissected the situation was chilling, as if it were all a predictable game where she already knew all the moves. "Nobody cried," Karen said, standing up. "We just had an honest conversation. Something that apparently doesn't happen much in your marriage." Melissa laughed. It was a short, sharp sound. "Honest? What an interesting word coming from you, Karen. Did you tell Andrew the honest part where you sold his childhood home without even consulting him? Where you made unilateral decisions about your life and then blamed him for not being present?" She hit a nerve. Karen knew it, and Melissa knew it too, because she smiled with satisfaction. "That house was mine," Karen replied. "My husband left it to me, not to Andrew. I had every right to sell it." Melissa took a step toward her. "Technically, yes. Legally, yes. But emotionally, Karen, that house held every memory of his childhood. The room he grew up in. The backyard where his father taught him to ride a bike. And you sold it to finance your vanity project. This hotel, your grand gesture, your way of proving to the world you weren't just another widow." Every word was a calculated stab, but there was truth in them. A twisted, poisoned truth, but truth nonetheless. "I sold that house because every room reminded me of what I had lost," Karen said, feeling her voice break. My husband died in that house, in our bedroom. I found him there one morning. Do you have any idea what it's like to wake up every day in the place where the person you loved most took his last breath? That house stopped being a home and became a mausoleum. I needed to get out of there, or I was going to drown in memories. Andrew's face crumpled. Mom, I didn't know. You never told me that. Of course she hadn't told him, because he was so consumed by his new life with Melissa that he never asked why Karen really needed to sell. He never asked how she was processing her grief. He just assumed it was a cold financial decision. There are a lot of things you don't know, Andrew, Karen said softly, because you stopped asking a long time ago. Melissa was unmoved by the emotional moment. Beautiful story. Very touching. But it doesn't change the fact that we are here to solve a practical problem. My family arrives in 2 days. I need 5 rooms. This hotel has 12. Mathematically, it should be simple. The audacity was stunning. After everything that had just happened, she still believed she was going to get what she wanted. The answer is no, Karen said firmly. This hotel is fully booked this weekend. I do not have 5 rooms available for your family. You're lying, Melissa said immediately. I just checked your website in the car. You have at least 7 rooms available for this weekend. Karen crossed her arms. I had 10 minutes ago. I asked Ethan to mark those rooms as unavailable. We are now officially full. Karen saw the exact moment Melissa understood she had lost. Her face went from disbelief to fury in a second. You can't do that. That's an abuse of power. It's petty revenge. It's my hotel, Karen replied simply. I can do whatever I want with my rooms. And I decided that this weekend, as originally planned, will be just for me and my son, if he still wants to stay, of course. All eyes turned to Andrew. The poor man was pale, caught between 2 opposing forces. Karen could see the internal war in his expression, the part of him that wanted to stay, that wanted to reclaim what they had lost, and the part that had been conditioned for years to never, ever contradict his wife. I need time, he said finally, to think, to process all of this. He turned to Melissa. Go to the car. I'll wait here a few more minutes with my mother, and then we'll go home. But tonight we're sleeping in separate rooms. We need space. Melissa's expression was one of pure panic. Separate rooms was the first step toward the end, and they both knew it. Andrew, that's not necessary, she began, but he held up a hand. Yes, it is. Please, Melissa, go to the car. This time there were no additional pleas, no tears. Melissa nodded, grabbed her purse, and walked to the exit. Before she walked through the door, she turned back one last time. Karen, I'm sorry. I'm sorry for a lot of things. I don't know if it matters now, but it's true. And then she was gone, leaving Andrew and Karen alone. Her son collapsed into the armchair, as if all the strings holding him upright had been simultaneously cut. I feel like my life just exploded, he said, staring at the ceiling. And the terrifying part is, I feel relieved. What kind of person feels relieved when their marriage is falling apart? Karen sat down beside him and took his hand. It was larger than hers now, calloused from office work and years, but she could still see the boy he had been. An honest person, she replied. A person who has been suffering in silence for too long. How did I get here, Mom? His voice broke. How did I let everything get this bad? Dad never would have let this happen. He knew how to set boundaries. He knew when to fight and when to give in. I just wanted to keep the peace. And in the process, I lost everything else. Karen squeezed his hand. Your father made mistakes too, Andrew. He wasn't perfect, but he learned. And you can learn too. It's not too late to get yourself back. Andrew looked at her with watery eyes. What if I don't know who I am anymore? What if Melissa is right, and without her, I'm just nothing? Listen to me very carefully, Karen said, turning to face him. You are my son. You are intelligent, kind, capable. You have a job you enjoy, skills that others value, a heart that deserves to be cared for. Melissa didn't make you. She molded you. Yes, she changed you, bent you, broke you in some places, but she didn't create you. You existed before her, and you will exist after her. And maybe, just maybe, the version of you that exists after will be stronger, more authentic, and happier. He wiped the tears with the back of his hand. Will there be anything left of my marriage after this weekend? The question was genuine, not rhetorical. I don't know, Karen admitted. Maybe you and Melissa can go to therapy, do the hard work, and rebuild on a more honest foundation. Or maybe you'll realize this marriage was built on unmet needs and toxic expectations, and the kindest thing you can do is let each other go. Either outcome is okay, Andrew. What's not okay is to continue like this. They sat in silence for a long time. Ethan passed by discreetly, offering them coffee, which they gratefully accepted. The hot, bitter liquid was exactly what Karen needed to ground herself in the moment, to prevent herself from being swept away by the tide of emotions threatening to drown her. Outside, the afternoon sun cast long shadows across the lobby's marble floor. Karen could see Melissa in the car through the large windows, her posture rigid, her attention fixed on her phone. Even in crisis, her daughter-in-law maintained that perfect exterior. Andrew cradled his coffee mug, staring into the dark liquid as if it might contain answers to questions he hadn't even formulated yet. The resemblance to his father in that moment was so striking that Karen felt a physical ache in her chest. James had done the same thing, held his coffee with both hands, hunched slightly over it, seeking warmth and clarity in equal measure. Can I ask you something, Mom? Andrew's words were careful, tentative. Anything, Karen replied, surprised by how steady her voice sounded. When you built this hotel, when you made the decision to sell the house and start over, were you scared? Karen smiled sadly. I was terrified. Every single day, every decision, every loan I signed, it felt like jumping off a cliff, not knowing if there was water below. And what kept you going? He asked. The alternative, Karen said simply. The alternative was staying where I was, in a house full of ghosts, in a life that didn't exist anymore, waiting for you or someone else to rescue me. And I realized that no one was coming, that if I wanted a different life, I had to build it myself. She gestured at the lobby around them, the plants, the paintings, the carefully chosen furniture. So I did, brick by brick, mistake by mistake, until one day I looked around and saw that I had created something beautiful. She touched the armrest of her chair, running her fingers along the smooth fabric. This place saved me, Andrew. It gave me purpose when I thought I had none left. Andrew nodded slowly. I think I need to find what's going to save me. He set his empty coffee cup on the small table between them. You know what's funny? When Melissa and I first met, I thought she was saving me. After Dad died, I was so lost. I threw myself into work, stayed late at the office, avoided coming home to an empty apartment. Then I met her at that charity function, and she was so alive, so certain about everything. She had opinions about food, politics, art, fashion, things I'd never given much thought to. Being with her felt like stepping into a perfectly organized world where everything had its place. It was a relief. When did that change? Karen asked gently. Andrew's eyes darkened. It happened so gradually I barely noticed. The suggestions became criticisms. The preferences became rules. The perfect world became a cage. He shook his head. But that's not even the worst part. The worst part is that I became someone else to keep her happy. I stopped seeing my friends because she found them tiresome. I turned down a promotion that required travel because she said I was choosing my career over our marriage. I changed my clothes, my haircut, the way I spent my free time, all to avoid those looks of disappointment, those sighs, those silent treatments. Karen felt a mix of anger and sorrow wash over her. She had suspected much of this, but hearing it confirmed made it painfully real. Why didn't you tell me any of this before? Shame, I guess. Andrew's voice was barely audible. I was embarrassed that I had let it happen, that I wasn't strong enough to stand up to her. Dad would have never— "Stop that!" Karen interrupted. "Stop comparing yourself to your father. James wasn't perfect. He made his own mistakes." "Not like this," Andrew insisted. "He wouldn't have let someone change him so completely." Karen reached for her son's hand. "Andrew, your father and I were married for 33 years. We grew up together, learned together. We had terrible fights. There were times I wasn't sure we'd make it." She squeezed his hand. "The man you remember, the one who knew how to set boundaries and stand his ground, that wasn't the same man I married at 22. That was a man who had learned from his mistakes, just as you're learning now." Andrew looked up, surprised. "You and Dad had problems?" "Of course we did. Marriage is hard, sweetheart. The difference was that we fought for each other, not against each other. We compromised, but we didn't surrender who we were." She paused, gathering her thoughts. "There was this time, early in our marriage, when your father wanted to move to Seattle for a job opportunity. I didn't want to go. I had my teaching position, my friends, my routines. We fought about it for weeks. But do you know what we didn't do? We didn't make each other feel guilty for having different needs. We talked, we listened, we found a solution that worked for both of us." "What happened?" "He turned down the job, but I helped him find a similar position locally. It paid a little less, but he was happier in the long run because we were both heard and respected." She smiled at the memory. "That's what I want for you, Andrew. Not a perfect marriage. They don't exist, but a respectful one. One where you're valued for who you are, not punished for who you aren't." Andrew absorbed this in silence. The wall clock ticked steadily, marking time as mother and son sat together, both processing the truths that had been too long unspoken. Finally, Andrew spoke. "You know what scares me the most? I don't even know if I love her anymore, or if I just love the idea of what our marriage was supposed to be. Or maybe I'm just afraid of failing, of admitting I made a mistake." "There's no shame in recognizing a relationship isn't working," Karen said softly. "The shame would be staying in it out of fear when you know in your heart it's hurting you." Andrew stood up abruptly. "I should go. She's waiting and we have a lot to talk about." He hesitated. "Thank you, Mom, for not giving up on me, even when I had given up on us." He hugged her then, a long, tight hug, the kind they hadn't shared since he was a teenager. He smelled different now, like expensive cologne Melissa had probably picked out. But underneath it, Karen could still detect something familiar. Her son, her baby, her hope. "I love you, Mom," he whispered into her hair. "I'm so sorry I've been absent. I'm sorry I didn't protect what we had." The tears Karen had been holding back finally began to fall. "I love you too, sweetheart. Always. No matter what." They pulled apart slowly, both wiping away tears with shaky smiles. "I should go," Andrew repeated, glancing toward the door where he knew Melissa was waiting. "She's in the car, and we have a lot to talk about tonight." "Before you go, promise me something," Karen said. He looked at her expectantly. "Promise me that no matter what you decide to do, it will be because you chose it. Not out of fear, not out of guilt, not because of what others expect of you, but because it's what you truly want in your heart." He swallowed hard. "I promise, Mom." Karen watched him walk to the exit. Just before he stepped through the door, he stopped and turned around. "The weekend," he said. I think I'd like to stay here with you, if the offer still stands." Karen's heart leaped. "It will always stand." He smiled. It was a small, tired, but genuine smile. "I'll come by Friday afternoon, after Melissa's family is settled at another hotel. Does that work?" "That sounds perfect," Karen replied, her voice steady despite her racing heart. "I'll have the suite ready for you." And then he was gone. Karen heard the car engine start. She saw the taillights disappear down the gravel path, and for the first time in 5 years, she felt real hope. Karen couldn't sleep that night. She stayed in her room on the 4th floor, watching the ocean through the window. The waves were constant, endless, reminding her that life went on no matter what. She thought about everything that had happened in the last few hours, the confrontation, the revelations, the tears. Andrew, her son, finally finding his voice. At 3:00 a.m., her phone vibrated. A text message from an unknown number. "Karen, it's Melissa. I know you probably don't want to hear from me, but I need to tell you something. Andrew is asleep in the guest room. I'm in our bed alone, thinking about everything that happened today. You were right about all of it. I've been terrible to you. I've manipulated Andrew. I've projected my own issues onto our marriage. I don't know if I can change, but I want to try. Not for my mother, not for appearances, but because I realize today that I'm about to lose the only man who has ever genuinely loved me, and that terrifies me more than my family's disapproval." Karen read the message 3 times. She didn't reply immediately. She took her time, choosing her words carefully. Finally, she wrote, "Melissa, recognizing the problem is the first step, but apologies without real change are just manipulation by another name. If you truly want to save your marriage, get professional help. Individual therapy, couples therapy. Do the work. Not for Andrew, for you, because you deserve to be more than the sum of your mother's expectations." She pressed send and turned off her phone. Whether Melissa would take her advice or not, Karen had said her piece. The rest was up to them. The next morning, Karen threw herself into hotel business. There were invoices to review, staff schedules to approve, a minor plumbing issue in room 7 to sort out. The ordinary tasks were comforting in their mundanity, a welcome distraction from the emotional earthquake of the previous day. At noon, her phone rang. It was Andrew. "Mom?" he said, his voice strained but determined. "I need to tell you something." Karen braced herself. "Go ahead." "Melissa and I talked all night. Really talked for the first time in years." He took a deep breath. "I told her everything. How I've been feeling, how her control has been suffocating me, how I've lost myself. She cried a lot. She apologized. But words are easy," Karen finished for him. "Exactly. So I told her I'm not sure if our marriage can be saved. But if we're going to try, things need to change drastically. I'm going to therapy, with or without her. I'm reconnecting with my friends. I'm applying for that promotion I turned down last year. And I'm spending this weekend with you, as planned." "How did she take it?" Karen asked, unable to hide the concern in her voice. "Actually, she agreed to everything. She even suggested we both go to individual counseling as well as couples therapy. She said she's been texting with her sister all morning, and they had some sort of breakthrough conversation about their mother." Karen was surprised. Perhaps her late-night message had made more of an impact than she'd expected. "That sounds promising," she said cautiously. "I'm still coming on Friday," Andrew confirmed. "I need this weekend with you. I need to reconnect, to remember who I am outside of my marriage." "I'll be here," Karen assured him. After they hung up, Karen wondered if Melissa's change of heart was genuine or just another manipulation tactic. She had seen women like Melissa before, women who morphed into exactly what you wanted just long enough to regain control, only to revert to their true selves once they felt secure again. Still, she hoped for Andrew's sake that this time was different. The next morning, Karen received another unexpected call. This time it was Robert, a fellow hotel owner and old friend who ran the Ocean Breeze Lodge about 20 minutes down the coast. "Karen, I need to pick your brain about something," he began. "A woman called to book 5 rooms for this weekend, very last minute. Said she was desperate. Mentioned she knew you. Name's Melissa Fleming." Karen sat up straighter in her chair. "What did you tell her?" "That we're nearly full, but I might be able to accommodate them if they're flexible on room types." She sounded intense. "Is there something I should know?" Karen hesitated, weighing her options. She could tell Robert to refuse the booking, creating another crisis for Melissa. Or she could help smooth the way, potentially making the weekend easier for everyone involved, including Andrew. "Robert, she's my daughter-in-law. It's complicated. But if you can accommodate her family, I'd consider it a personal favor." "Say no more," Robert replied. Consider it done. I'll put them in the ocean view section. Not our most expensive rooms, but definitely not shabby. Thank you, Karen said, genuinely relieved. And Robert, could you not mention that I called? Karen Morgan calling in a favor for her daughter-in-law? Never happened, he said with a chuckle before hanging up. Karen sat back in her chair, surprised at her own actions. Why had she helped Melissa, the woman who had caused her so much pain over the years? Perhaps it was for Andrew's sake, to make his weekend with her more peaceful, knowing his wife's family was settled. Or perhaps it was something deeper, a recognition of the broken woman behind Melissa's perfect facade, a woman who, like Karen herself, was fighting to survive in a world that had damaged her. Later that afternoon, Karen was reviewing reservation details for the weekend when Ethan knocked on her office door. Mrs. Morgan, there's someone here to see you. Karen looked up, surprised. Who is it? Ethan shifted uncomfortably. It's Mrs. Fleming, Melissa. She's in the lobby. Karen's heart skipped a beat. Tell her I'll be right down. When Karen entered the lobby, Melissa was standing by the windows, looking out at the garden. She had traded yesterday's emerald dress for a simple gray pantsuit. Her hair was pulled back in a low ponytail, and she wore minimal makeup, a stark contrast to her usual impeccable appearance. She turned when she heard Karen's footsteps. Thank you for seeing me, she said, her voice lacking its usual sharp edge. Would you like to sit down? Karen gestured to the same armchairs where she and Andrew had talked the day before. Melissa nodded, perching on the edge of one chair as if ready to flee at any moment. Karen noticed her hands were trembling slightly. I got rooms at the Ocean Breeze Lodge, Melissa began. They had a cancellation this morning. 5 rooms, ocean view. That's good, Karen replied neutrally, wondering why Melissa had come in person to tell her this. I wanted to thank you, Melissa continued, looking down at her hands, for your text last night. You could have ignored me or told me off. You didn't. I meant what I said, Karen told her. About getting help. I know. I've already made appointments. For me and for Andrew and me together. Melissa finally met Karen's eyes. I also came to apologize properly, not via text, but face to face. What I did, trying to cancel your reservation, the things I said about your hotel, the way I've treated you for years. It was inexcusable. Karen studied the younger woman's face, searching for signs of the manipulation she had come to expect, but all she saw was exhaustion and a vulnerability that seemed genuine. Why now, Melissa? Karen asked. After 5 years, why the sudden change? Because yesterday was the first time I saw myself clearly, Melissa admitted, her voice catching. When Andrew wouldn't immediately leave with me, when he chose to stay and talk to you, it was like a mirror shattering. I saw what I'd become. She took a shaky breath. And then last night, when he told me everything, how unhappy he's been, how he feels like he's lost himself, I realized I've been doing to him exactly what my mother did to me. Melissa's eyes filled with tears. I've spent my whole life trying to be perfect enough for my mother. Perfect grades, perfect job, perfect husband, perfect home. Nothing was ever enough. Andrew was the first person who loved me exactly as I was, and I repaid him by trying to make him perfect too, by my mother's impossible standards. The raw honesty took Karen by surprise. This wasn't the polished, controlled Melissa she knew. This was someone broken, someone struggling to break free from patterns that had been imprinted on her since childhood. My mother arrives tomorrow, Melissa continued, wiping away tears. Melissa, Evelyn, and the rest of the family. I told them we had a beautiful hotel reserved, that we were going to have the perfect weekend. If they arrive and find us staying somewhere else, if I have to admit I failed at even this, her voice broke. They'll criticize everything, Karen finished for her. The hotel, the rooms, the change in plans. They'll compare it to what your sister would have done. They'll bring it up at every family gathering for months. Melissa looked up, startled. How did you know? Because that's what people like your mother do, Karen said simply. They find the cracks in your armor and they dig in, making sure you never forget your failures. It's exhausting, Melissa whispered. It always has been. But she's my mother. It's my family. I can't just cut ties. She stopped abruptly, realizing what she'd implied. Like I made Andrew do with you, she added, shame coloring her voice. There's a difference between setting healthy boundaries and cutting ties, Karen replied. I never wanted to lose Andrew, but it got to a point where staying close meant losing my dignity, my mental health, my sense of self-worth. So I stepped away to survive, to build something that was mine, where no one could make me feel small. She gestured around the lobby. This hotel is my sanctuary, the place where I reclaimed my power. And yes, part of that meant putting physical distance between me and my pain. I don't know how to be different, Melissa confessed. This is who I am. It's how I was raised. And that's exactly the question, Karen said quietly. Can you change? Do you want to change? Because Andrew can't keep living like this. And frankly, neither can you. Melissa sat in silence, absorbing Karen's words. Outside, the afternoon sun filtered through the lobby's large windows, casting long shadows across the marble floor. When I was 12, she finally said, my mother threw away my science fair project the night before it was due. I'd worked on it for weeks, a model of the solar system. I'd painted each planet, calculated the distances, built the stands myself. She said it wasn't good enough, that if I presented it, I'd embarrass the family. Karen listened, her heart sinking at the casual cruelty. My father tried to help me rebuild it overnight, but she sent him to bed, said he was enabling mediocrity. I went to school the next day with nothing to present. I got an F, the only one in my academic career. Melissa's voice was distant, as if she were watching the scene play out before her. When the teacher asked what happened, I lied, said I'd forgotten about the assignment. It was easier than admitting the truth. And your sister? Karen prompted gently. Melissa's laugh was hollow. Evelyn could do no wrong. Her projects were always displayed prominently in the house, her grades framed, her accomplishments announced at every family dinner. Why can't you be more like your sister? Was the soundtrack of my childhood. So you learned to be perfect, Karen said. To control everything around you, to avoid criticism. Yes, Melissa wiped away a tear with the back of her hand. But it's never enough. No matter how well I dress, how perfectly I decorate our home, how successful Andrew's career is, she always finds something to critique. And Andrew became your project, Karen concluded. Your chance to create the perfect life that would finally earn your mother's approval. God, it sounds so terrible when you say it like that, Melissa whispered. But yes, I wanted to show her I could have an enviable life too, a successful husband, a beautiful home, the right friends, the right vacations. She trailed off, the futility of it all seemingly dawning on her. Karen leaned forward. Melissa, I want to ask you something, and I need you to be honest. Not with me, but with yourself. When you imagine a life where you don't have to impress your mother anymore, where you can just be who you are without her approval, what does that feel like? Melissa closed her eyes. For several moments she was absolutely still. When she opened her eyes again, they were filled with a mix of wonder and terror. Free, she said simply. It feels like freedom, but also terrifying. Who am I without that? Who am I if I'm not constantly trying to be what she wants? That's the question worth answering, Karen told her. Who are you, Melissa? Not your mother's daughter, not Andrew's wife. You. The question hung in the air between them, profound in its simplicity. Melissa seemed to shrink under its weight, as if no one had ever asked her that before, not even herself. I don't know, she admitted, her voice barely audible. I honestly don't know. Karen felt an unexpected surge of compassion for this woman who had caused her so much pain. Behind the polished exterior and cutting remarks was someone as lost and broken as Karen had been after James died. When your mother arrives tomorrow, Karen said slowly, measuring each word, what do you think is going to happen? Melissa laughed humorlessly. She's going to critique everything. The hotel, the rooms, the food, the service. She's going to compare it to the resort Evelyn stayed at last month. She'll find something to criticize. She always does. And then for the next 6 months, at every family gathering, she'll casually mention how her weekend was disappointing, how she expected more. The description was so specific, so painful, that Karen winced. And you're going to spend the entire weekend trying to manage her mood, she added, apologizing for things that aren't your fault, trying to make every moment perfect so that maybe, just maybe, she'll give you a crumb of approval. Am I wrong? Melissa shook her head, fresh tears streaming down her cheeks. It's exhausting, she said. It always has been. Can I give you some unsolicited advice? Karen asked. Melissa nodded, wiping away tears. Stop trying to please her. You never will. That's not a failure on your part. It's a deliberate choice on hers. Some people need others to fail so they can feel superior. Karen thought of her own mother-in-law, a woman who had resented her from the moment James had introduced them. For years, Karen had tried to win her approval, only to realize that the woman's disapproval had nothing to do with Karen and everything to do with her own insecurities. But how? Melissa asked desperately. How do I just stop caring? You don't stop caring overnight, Karen admitted. But you can start by recognizing that her criticisms aren't truths. They're weapons designed to keep you in your place. When she starts in on how the hotel isn't good enough, don't apologize. Don't scramble to fix it. Just say, I'm sorry you feel that way, and change the subject. She'll be furious, Melissa whispered. Yes, she will, Karen agreed. Because for the first time, you won't be playing by her rules. But here's what you need to ask yourself. What's worse, her temporary anger or your lifelong misery trying to please someone who has decided never to be pleased? Melissa was quiet for a long moment, absorbing this. I've never stood up to her, she finally said. Not once in 32 years. It's never too late to start, Karen told her. But only if that's what you want. This can't be about saving your marriage or impressing me or anyone else. It has to be for you. Melissa stood up abruptly, smoothing her slacks with trembling hands. I should go. I have a lot to think about before tomorrow. Karen rose as well. One last thing, she said. Andrew told me he's still coming here this weekend. Are you okay with that? No, Melissa admitted candidly. But I'm trying to be. He deserves space to figure things out. We both do. She hesitated. Thank you, Karen, for listening, for not hating me, even though you have every right to. Hate takes too much energy, Karen replied. And at my age, I'm learning to conserve mine for things that matter. As Melissa turned to leave, Karen found herself saying something she never thought she would. If you need anything this weekend, advice, support, just someone to talk to, you can call me. Melissa paused, visibly surprised. Why would you help me after everything I've done? Because I recognize the look in your eyes, Karen said simply. It's the same one I saw in the mirror after James died. The look of someone realizing they've been building their life on a foundation that's crumbling beneath their feet. Melissa nodded, unable to speak past the lump in her throat. She turned and walked out, her steps less certain than when she had entered, but perhaps a little more real. After she left, Karen sank back into her chair, emotionally drained. The encounter had been unexpected in every way. She had anticipated anger, perhaps more manipulation. What she hadn't expected was vulnerability, honesty, pain. Her phone buzzed, a text from Andrew. Just checking in, everything okay? Karen typed back. Everything's fine. Melissa stopped by. We talked, really talked, I think for the first time. Andrew's response was immediate. Wow, what did she want? Karen thought carefully about her answer. To apologize, and maybe to understand. How are you holding up? Confused, sad, relieved, terrified, all of the above, still planning to come Friday. Karen smiled at her phone. The suite will be ready. Sweet dreams, honey. Night, Mom. Love you. Karen set her phone down, gazing out at the ocean. The sun was beginning to set, staining the water with streaks of gold and pink. 5 years of pain, of silence, of distance, and somehow, in the span of 48 hours, everything had changed. Whether those changes would last, whether Andrew and Melissa's marriage could be salvaged, whether Melissa could break free from her mother's toxic influence, these were questions Karen couldn't answer. But for the first time in years, there was hope. And sometimes, hope was enough to start rebuilding what had been broken. Friday arrived faster than Karen expected. She spent the days obsessively preparing the main suite. Fresh flowers, the softest linen sheets, a bottle of that wine Andrew used to like when he was younger. Little details he might not even notice, but that were important to her. The morning was consumed with hotel business. A minor issue with the air conditioning in room 3 needed her attention, and a last-minute cancellation required some shuffling of the weekend bookings. Around noon, her phone rang. It was Robert from the Ocean Breeze Lodge. "Karen, sorry to bother you, but I need to tell you something about your guests." Her stomach tensed. "What happened?" "Melissa's family arrived this morning. The mother, Vivian, has been difficult. Nothing is good enough. The rooms are too small. The food isn't what she expected. The service is slow. She's made 2 of my staff members cry." Karen closed her eyes, picturing the scene. "And Melissa?" "That's why I'm calling," Robert continued. "When Melissa tried to calm her mother down, the woman said something I overheard. Something about how her daughter can't even organize a simple weekend without ruining it. Poor Melissa, living the exact scenario she had feared." "How is she handling it?" Karen asked. "Not well," Robert replied. "I saw her in the garden an hour ago, just crying. I offered her some tea and she told me she was grateful. Said at least someone was being kind to her." Karen thanked him for the update and hung up. She stared at the phone, debating internally. Finally, she made a decision and called Melissa. She answered on the second ring, her voice choked. "Karen?" "I heard what happened. Robert called me." Silence, then a sob. "My mother hates everything. She says I've embarrassed her, that her weekend is ruined because of my incompetence, that Evelyn never would have made such a huge mistake." "Melissa, listen to me," Karen said firmly. "Your mother is wrong. You didn't ruin anything. The Ocean Breeze Lodge is an excellent hotel. If it's not good enough for her, the problem isn't you. It's her and her impossible expectations." More crying. "You don't understand. My whole life I've been trying to please her. My whole life I've been the disappointment." "I understand more than you think," Karen replied. "Because I also spent years trying to be enough for someone who would never be satisfied. Melissa, as long as you keep measuring your worth by your mother's approval, you will always lose, because she is never going to give it to you. Not completely, not in the way you need." There was a long pause, punctuated only by Melissa's uneven breathing. "What do I do?" Her voice was small, lost. "You set boundaries," Karen told her. "You tell her that her behavior is not acceptable, that you will not allow her to treat the service staff badly, that if she can't be respectful, she can find another hotel. And if that means she gets angry with you, that she talks badly about you at family gatherings, that she compares you to Evelyn, you accept it, because your peace of mind is worth more than her approval." "I'm scared," Melissa admitted. "I know. But Melissa, you're already suffering. The question is, would you rather suffer setting boundaries and regaining your dignity, or suffer by staying in this endless cycle where you are never enough?" The silence stretched. Finally, Melissa said, "You're right. Thank you, Karen. For everything. For the rooms. For this call. For not treating me the way I deserve after everything I did to you." They hung up shortly after. Karen didn't know if Melissa would actually do anything differently, but at least she had planted the seed. At 5:00 p.m., Andrew's car appeared in the parking lot. Karen's heart pounded so hard she thought it might burst from her chest. She watched from her office window as he got out with a small suitcase. He looked different somehow, lighter, as if a weight had been lifted from his shoulders. When he walked into the lobby, he smiled at her. "Hi, Mom." "Hi, sweetheart." Ethan handed him the key to the suite with a knowing grin. "Presidential suite, Mr. Andrew. Enjoy your stay." Andrew laughed. Thanks, Ethan. They rode the elevator up together in comfortable silence. When Karen opened the door to the suite, she saw Andrew's expression change. Surprise, emotion, appreciation. Mom, this is amazing. The room was spacious, with floor-to-ceiling windows looking directly out at the ocean. The king-sized bed was covered with the lavender-colored quilt Karen had found at an artisan market. There was a private balcony with 2 chairs and a small table, a bathroom with a deep-soaking tub and a rainfall shower. She had placed framed photos on the nightstand. Photos of Andrew as a child, of his father, of the 3 of them together. Andrew walked over to the photos and touched them tenderly. I haven't seen these in years. I saved them, all of them. I thought maybe someday you'd want to see them again. He turned to her, his eyes misty. Thank you for not giving up on me, Mom. For keeping trying even when I had stopped responding. She hugged him. You're my son. I would never give up. They stood like that for a long moment, silently healing years of distance. That night they had dinner on the hotel terrace. Ethan had set up a special table for 2, away from the other guests. They ate, drank wine, and talked about everything and nothing. Karen told him about the challenges of running the hotel, the difficult personalities, the wonderful guests who had become friends. He told her about his job, his frustrations, his dreams he had buried. Did you ever want to be an architect? Karen asked, remembering his passion as a teenager. I used to. Now, I don't know. I feel like I've been living on autopilot for so long. I don't even know what I'm passionate about anymore. Then this weekend is for rediscovering that, Karen said, reaching across the table to squeeze his hand. No pressure, no expectations. Just you deciding what you want from life. Andrew nodded thoughtfully. Melissa and I had a long talk on Wednesday after I got home. It was brutal, painful, but necessary. I told her everything. How I felt, how her family made me feel, how her manipulations had worn me down. He paused, swirling the wine in his glass. She cried a lot. She apologized. She promised to change. He looked out at the darkening sky. I don't know if I believe her, Mom. She's promised to change before, after every big fight, and it lasts for a week, maybe 2. Then it's back to the same pattern. What did you tell her? Karen asked. I told her this time was different, that we either get real professional help or I'm leaving, not as a threat, but as a fact, because I can't live like that anymore. He took a sip of wine. She agreed. She found a therapist. Our first couples session is on Tuesday, and she started individual therapy yesterday. Karen was surprised. She had expected resistance. That's progress. Yeah, but she also told me something that made me think. She said, if we're going to therapy, I need you to work on your stuff too. On your inability to set boundaries. On your need to please. On how your silence was just as destructive as my manipulation. She's right, Andrew admitted. A marriage is a 2-person responsibility. She has her work to do. I have mine. Karen nodded. She's right about that. Andrew looked at her directly. Do you think we can save it? Our marriage? The question hung in the air between them. Karen considered her words carefully. Honestly, I don't know. But I know that if you're going to try, it has to be for the right reasons. Not out of fear of being alone, not for appearances, but because you genuinely believe there is something there worth saving. Real love, mutual respect, a future you both want. He contemplated her words in silence. The ocean roared softly below. The stars were beginning to appear in the night sky. I got a text from Melissa an hour ago, he said finally. She stood up to her mother, told her if she couldn't be respectful to the hotel staff, she could leave. Her mother was shocked, started crying, saying Melissa was ungrateful, that she was just trying to help. He shook his head in disbelief. But Melissa didn't back down. She told her mother that she's tired of never being good enough, tired of being compared to Evelyn. She said she loves her but won't tolerate being belittled anymore. Karen was genuinely surprised. How did her mother react? Apparently, she stormed off to her room, But Melissa's sister Evelyn took her aside afterward and told her it was about time someone stood up to their mother. Said she's been wanting to do it for years but didn't have the courage. That's a significant step, Karen observed. Standing up to someone who's controlled you your whole life takes enormous courage. Andrew nodded. I'm proud of her, and a little ashamed that I never showed the same courage in defending you. The past is past, Karen told him gently. What matters is what we do now, moving forward. They finished their meal under the stars, the conversation flowing more easily than it had in years. As they walked back to the suite, Andrew seemed thoughtful. You know what I realized today? He said. I've spent the last 5 years walking on eggshells, trying to avoid Melissa's displeasure. And the whole time, I was miserable. Today, for the first time in I don't know how long, I felt peaceful. Just being here, talking to you, not having to measure every word. Karen's heart ached with love for her son. That's how life should feel, Andrew. Not perfect, not without challenges, but fundamentally peaceful in your own skin, with the people you love. That night, as Karen lay in her own room, listening to the waves crash against the shore, she felt a cautious optimism. Whatever happened with Andrew and Melissa, whether they saved their marriage or parted ways, her son was finding his voice again, and that was a victory in itself. Saturday dawned with a clear sky and the sound of seagulls. Karen and Andrew had a breakfast together on the suite's balcony, fresh pastries and strong coffee. Andrew looked rested for the first time in years. I slept for 8 straight hours, he told her with amazement. I can't remember the last time that happened. Karen smiled. This place has that effect, the sound of the sea, the peace, the absence of tension. After breakfast, they walked down to the beach. The sand was cool beneath their bare feet, the morning sun gentle on their skin. They walked in comfortable silence for a while, letting the rhythmic sound of the waves wash over them. I've been thinking about Dad a lot, Andrew said finally. About how much I miss him, about how he would have handled the situation. He would have told you to stand up for your mother, Karen said with a small smile. He was always very clear on that. Family first. I know, Andrew replied. And I'm ashamed it took me so long to realize I betrayed that. Him, you, and myself. They sat down in the sand, watching the waves roll in and out. The beach was nearly empty, just a few early morning joggers and a couple walking a dog in the distance. Your father wasn't perfect, you know, Karen said after a while. He had a temper. He was stubborn sometimes. Other times he avoided conflicts he should have faced. But what he had, and what he never lost, was his moral compass. He knew the difference between keeping the peace and betraying his values. That's the difference. Andrew sifted sand through his fingers, letting it fall slowly. How did he learn that? Karen laughed softly. By making mistakes. Lots of them. And by having someone who loved him enough to call him out on them. She thought back to the early years of their marriage. The arguments, the misunderstandings. The slow, sometimes painful process of learning to truly see and respect each other. He always said that the most important thing in a relationship wasn't avoiding conflict. It was how you handled it. Whether you fought against each other or together against the problem. She looked at her son. That's what I wish for you, Andrew. Whether it's with Melissa or someday someone else. A partner who stands beside you, not against you. Andrew nodded, his expression thoughtful. I think I'm beginning to understand what that means. They spent the rest of the morning on the beach, talking, reminiscing, reconnecting. When they returned to the hotel, there was a message waiting for Andrew at the front desk. Melissa had called, asking him to call her back when he had a moment. Andrew looked at Karen, uncertainty in his eyes. Go ahead, she encouraged him. I'll be in my office if you need me. 15 minutes later, Andrew knocked on her office door, his expression unreadable. Everything okay? Karen asked, setting aside the paperwork she'd been reviewing. Melissa's mother and aunt are leaving early, he said, sitting down across from her. Apparently, after Melissa stood her ground yesterday, Her mother spent the night complaining to everyone who would listen. This morning at breakfast, she announced that since she wasn't appreciated, she was going home. Melissa's aunt is going with her. "How is Melissa taking it?" Karen asked carefully. Andrew's face broke into a small, surprised smile. She said she feels relieved. She thought she would feel guilty or panic, but instead she just feels lighter. Her sister and uncles are staying for the rest of the weekend. They're actually planning to go sightseeing and have dinner together tonight. "That's wonderful," Karen said, genuinely happy for Melissa. Taking that first step toward independence, toward self-respect, was often the hardest. "She also asked how our weekend is going," Andrew continued. "I told her it's been good, healing. She said she was glad." He paused. "I think she meant it, Mom. I really do." Karen nodded. "I hope so, Andrew, for both your sakes." They spent the afternoon exploring the grounds of the hotel. Karen showed him the gardens she had personally designed, the hidden nooks perfect for reading or quiet contemplation, the small gazebo overlooking the ocean where guests sometimes renewed their vows or celebrated special occasions. "You've created something truly special here," Andrew told her, his voice full of admiration. "It's not just a business. It's a sanctuary." "That's exactly what I wanted it to be," Karen replied, touched by his understanding. "A place where people could come to find peace, to reconnect with themselves and each other. The business part matters, of course. I need to keep the lights on. But it was never just about making money." At sunset, they sat on the terrace again, watching the sky transform into a canvas of pinks, purples, and golds. The chef had prepared a special dinner for them: local seafood, fresh vegetables from the hotel's garden, a bottle of the region's finest wine. "To new beginnings," Karen toasted, raising her glass. "To new beginnings," Andrew echoed. "And to never forgetting what matters most." As they ate, Andrew shared more about his work, his aspirations, the promotion he was considering pursuing now. "It would mean more travel," he explained. 2 or 3 days a week, sometimes more. "But it's in architectural project management, helping oversee the design and construction of commercial buildings. It's the closest I can get to my old dream without going back to school." "It sounds perfect for you," Karen said, delighted to see the spark of enthusiasm in his eyes. "I think it might be. And the funny thing is, when I mentioned it to Melissa last night, she said I should go for it, that she'd support me, even with the travel." He shook his head in amazement. 2 weeks ago, she would have cried for days at the mere suggestion. "People can change," Karen said, "when they truly want to. The question is whether the change lasts." Andrew nodded thoughtfully. "I guess that's what we'll find out." After dinner, they walked along the hotel's private beach path, the moon casting a silver glow over the water. The night was warm, the sea breeze gentle against their skin. "Thank you for this weekend, Mom," Andrew said as they reached the end of the path, "for giving me space to think, to remember who I am outside of all the chaos." Karen squeezed his arm affectionately. "That's what mothers do, sweetheart. We hold space for our children to find themselves again and again, as many times as they need to." They stood in comfortable silence, watching the moonlight dance on the waves. Tomorrow, Andrew would go back home, back to Melissa, back to the complicated reality of their marriage. But tonight, in this moment, there was just mother and son, reconnected, healing, moving forward together. Sunday morning came too quickly. Andrew packed his suitcase while Karen made coffee. There was a bittersweet quality to their last few hours together, the joy of reconnection tempered by the knowledge that soon they would part again. "I'd like to come back," Andrew said as they stood on the balcony, watching the early risers walking on the beach below. "Maybe once a month, just to check in, spend some time together." "I'd love that," Karen replied, her heart full. "This is your home too, Andrew. You're always welcome here." When they went down to the lobby, Ethan already had everything ready. "It was a pleasure having you, Mr. Andrew," he said with a warm smile. "I hope to see you again soon." "You will," Andrew assured him. "I promise." They hugged in the parking lot, the sun shining down on them, casting long shadows across the gravel. "Thank you, Mom, for not giving up. For this hotel for reminding me who I am." Karen held him tight. Thank you for coming back to me. She watched his car drive away, following its progress until it disappeared from view. But this time was different. There was no sadness, no despair, just hope. Hope that they had found their way back to each other. 2 months later, Karen got a call from Andrew. "Mom, I have news," he said, his voice calm. "Melissa and we tried. We went to therapy. We did the work. But in the end, we both realized the damage was just too deep. We're getting a divorce. It's amicable. She's still in individual therapy. So am I. We're both healing." Karen's heart squeezed. "Are you okay?" There was a pause. "Yeah, Mom. I'm okay. Sad, but okay. Because for the first time in years, I'm being honest with myself. I'm choosing what's right for me, not what's easiest or what will keep the peace." Karen smiled through the tears that had begun to form. "That's all that matters, sweetheart." "There's something else," Andrew continued. "I got the promotion. I start next month. And, I was thinking of looking for an apartment closer to the hotel. Would that be okay?" "More than okay," Karen assured him, her voice thick with emotion. "It would be wonderful." 6 months later, Andrew moved into an apartment just 10 minutes from the hotel. He started visiting every week for dinner, for walks on the beach, for real conversations about his life, his hopes, his healing journey. The architect in him had reawakened, and he brought sketches to show Karen, ideas for a small extension to the hotel, a wellness center with large windows overlooking the ocean. One day, a letter arrived for Karen. The handwriting on the envelope was unfamiliar, but the return address made her pause. It was from Melissa. Inside was a 4-page letter, written in neat, careful script. Melissa wrote about her ongoing therapy, about the painful but necessary work of untangling her self-worth from her mother's approval. She shared that she had temporarily cut contact with her mother, that she was figuring out who she was without other people's expectations. "I'll always regret how I treated you," she wrote. "The years of disrespect, of keeping Andrew from you, of making you feel unwelcome in our lives. There's no excuse for it. But I want you to know that our conversations that weekend changed something in me. You showed me kindness when I deserved none, and that kindness gave me the courage to finally stand up for myself. Thank you for that gift, even if it came too late for Andrew and me." Karen wrote back, a shorter letter but no less heartfelt, wishing Melissa well on her journey. Because in the end, they were all just broken people trying to heal. And sometimes the greatest act of love was letting go of expectations, letting go of pain, letting go of resentment, and embracing the truth, even when it hurt. Because only in truth could they find freedom, and only in freedom could they find peace. Karen sat on her balcony that evening, watching the sunset over the ocean. The hotel was full, the sound of laughter and conversation drifting up from the terrace below. Andrew was coming for dinner in an hour. Life wasn't perfect. It never would be. But it was rich and full and real in a way it hadn't been for years. She thought about the journey that had brought her here. The grief of losing James. The pain of losing Andrew. The courage it had taken to start over at 60. The hotel had been her salvation, her proof to herself that she could build something meaningful from the ashes of loss. But in the end, the most precious thing she had rebuilt wasn't the building around her, but the relationship with her son. As the last rays of sun disappeared beneath the horizon, Karen felt a deep sense of peace settle over her. Tomorrow would bring its own challenges, its own joys. But tonight, in this moment, she was exactly where she needed to be, home.